Welcome back to the second episode of I Could Poison You, and it's time for us to pick our poison of today. Today we are choosing Deadly Nightshade, Atropa belladonna. As the name would imply, Deadly Nightshade is in the nightshade family. This herbaceous perennial grows to about 2 meters tall and prefers moist, shady woodlands. It'll die back in the winter and then come back in the spring, producing tubular purple flowers, which produce shiny black berries about the size of a cherry. Well, they start out green and then they ripen to black. According to reports, the berries are quite sweet and thus very dangerous for curious children or unwary passers-by. Now, I admittedly don't have any real knowledge about witchcraft, either historical or current, but according to the texts, Deadly Nightshade is one of the plants used in a flying ointment used by witches to, well, fly. Belladonna means pretty lady, alluding to the historical practice of ladies using the berry's juice in eye drops to temporarily dilate the pupils, thus making them more attractive. This would have the side effect also of making their vision blurred temporarily, which is a phenomenon that you can relate to if you've ever gone to the eye doctor and had them administer those dilating eye drops. The drug used in those drops, called atropine, is, or at least was, derived from Deadly Nightshade. And atropine eye drops have been used in at least one murder in 2009 in France. When a body was discovered in the trunk of a car, the body had been cut in half across the belly and had no blood at the cut line. The police determined that the body had been frozen before it was cut up, and they were also able to determine that atropine drops were the actual cause of death. Freezing and cutting happened later. Atropine refers back to the genus name Atropa, which in turn refers back to Atropa, one of the three fates of mythology. These sisters were responsible for spinning, measuring, and cutting a thread that represented the life of each individual. Atropa was the sister that cut the thread, making her the best-fitting representative for this poisonous plant. Deadly Nightshade has historically been used for wounds, love potions, and to help people sleep. Sometimes forever. The toxic constituents are alkaloids. Remember that word because it turns up a lot when we study poisonous plants. All parts of the plant are toxic, from the berries, leaves, stem down to the root. The berries are the most alluring, but the root is usually the most dangerous. So how much Deadly Nightshade or atropine is necessary to kill? Well, that's going to vary from person to person, but reportedly 2 to 4 berries can kill a child and 10 to 20 berries can kill an adult. It's difficult to rely on these numbers because we tend to err on the side of caution progressively in the retelling, and so the danger of a plant gets exaggerated oftentimes, and the lethal dose gets shrunk down. It's not always true, but it is often the case, and there's really no way to test that without eating the poison plant yourself. And I don't recommend that. So that number may be accurate, or you might be able to get away with eating some more. Either way, probably let's not try that, unless you have a really good reason to believe that you can. I am not advocating that. Related to that, this does appear to be the type of poison that you can build up an immunity, or at least a very strong resistance to, by repeatedly ingesting smaller, less dangerous doses. So, what are the symptoms of Deadly Nightshade poisoning? Bertin Rocher wrote a short verse to help us remember. Mad as a hatter, blind as a bat, dry as a bone, red as a beet, hot as a pistol. So, delusions are hallucinations, blurred eyesight, remember the atropine drops in the eyes, dry mouth, flushed skin, and fever. Fortunately, antidotes do exist. These are acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. Big word. And as I said in the first video, you really want to get to a doctor rather than trying to handle this yourself. But if that isn't an option for some reason, there are some of these accessible commonly to you and I. One of these is rosmaric acid, found in members of the Lamiaceae or the mint family, especially the rosemary plant. And another is caffeine, found in coffee, tea, and in Yopon holly leaves. So now we come to the theoretical, hypothetical, definitely not instructive portion of the video, where we discuss how one might use this plant as a poison. Just in case I wasn't clear, let me explicitly say it: don't poison anyone. Not only is it immoral, the police tend to frown on that, and they'll be able to look at your purchase history and see that you've watched this video, so you won't get away with it. So don't do it. Now, all that being said, let's talk about hypothetically using deadly nightshade as a poison. Examples from history would include arrows dipped in the plant's juices and poisoned drinks. A poisoned weapon would have the advantage of getting the poison directly into the bloodstream, meaning that it bypasses the ingestion process, and a much smaller dose would be needed to kill if the weapon didn't do that itself. But of course, a weapon is pretty obvious, so if you were going for a stealth kill, that's probably a bad option. And outside of total societal collapse with roving bands of looters, it's difficult to imagine a scenario where this strategy would be useful. A poisoned drink, on the other hand, would be much easier to conceal, and with the sweet taste of the berries in our ultra-sweet modern drinks, the recipient would be a lot less likely to notice anything off about the drink. We might also consider tincturing the plant's root, since it's the most poisonous part of the plant, and that should concentrate the dosage, meaning that something as little as maybe 1 dropper full from the tincture, maybe even just a few drops, might be a lethal dose. The strong alcohol taste from the tincture might mean that you'd have to hide it in an alcoholic beverage. Then again, if it was diluted into a big soda container like most people are drinking, they probably wouldn't taste it. Honestly, this would be an easy one to administer, and it wouldn't take all that much to be a lethal dose. History attests to its effectiveness. However, if the victim could get to a hospital, he or she would have a pretty good chance of making it through, as long as the hospital staff could recognize the symptoms and make a correct diagnosis. So it would be a pretty effective poison if you hypothetically ever came across a situation where you had to use it. Please don't make terrible choices. But of course, we're not going to do that for all of the reasons stated earlier. Deadly nightshade is one of the more deadly plants that we have available to us, but next time we're going to look at what might just be the most poisonous plant on Earth. See you then.